My name's Chad Reinders. I am a Michigan blueberry grower, also the acting president of the Michigan Blueberry Advisory Committee. So,
Sounds good. Jamie?
Jamie Clover Adams. I'm the executive director of the Michigan Asparagus Advisory Board. I grew up on a farm. I'm not a farmer, but I work for a lot of them.
And Ben.
I'm Ben Lacrosse. I'm a cherry farmer from Leelanau County, and I also serve as the Michigan Farm Bureau District Director in this area.
We're good.
Do you still hear a lot of static?
Do you hear Roxanne?
No.
Maya does not hear you.
I do hear you, but I hear a lot of static. I hear nothing now.
You may want to just tell me time cues, and I'll tell Maya discreetly. This is Mark. You're welcome.
But yours is working?
Or I'm hearing voices. I don't. It's hard to say. So.
Huh.
Okay, they're gonna get you another IFB box.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, apparently.
Okay.
Or again, the voices in my head, or yeah, problem solving.
All right.
Yeah.
Should I come to you guys or? Hi. A whole new box. Oh, wait, can I get an IFB check? Oh, okay. It'll be clear for like a second.
Did you say we're live on the stream? Oh, okay. What's the hardest crop to grow? Here.
I can
Yeah.
hear you, but it is indeed still pretty
Something that somebody actually tries to grow here that when you see them, you're like,
static.
take your hat off to them.
Yeah. Hmm. Can I get more testing?
Quality's hard.
Okay, I hear you right now.
Peach is hard up here.
Hard, but it's a variation on the word hard,
Yeah.
right? Because
Iffy.
we don't have the acidic soil that they do down there to grow blueberries.
Okay.
And we're a little bit too cold to grow
think I might-
peaches commercially
Okay.
up this far north.
I might just
And
have to
so
rely
if
on
you
one
say,
more.
is it hard to grow peaches? Yeah, it's almost as hard as growing oranges up here,
One more.
you know,
Right.
just because we're not suited for that.
I think over the years I've been to a
And I hear
couple
static, but I don't hear it.
either vineyards or something, and you'll see one peach tree and you'll be like, oh, what do you do with those? We eat those. You know, like we don't try to sell those, but
Static.
all right, Maya, we're about a minute and a half out.
What's that, Mark?
And Rox, do you know which camera's
A
going to be
different
the opening shot that we come out of the open on?
well, I was going to say
strawberries.
Strawberries wants to
Okay.
They're just big strawberry chemistry. That's what I think we grow well. Anywhere from that size.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Which one is camera 2?
Oh, no. Quite staticky. Ooh, very staticky. Oh gosh. It's not better. Do you need some help? All right, thank you. All right.
We're in the open. We're in the open. We're in.
This is a Your Voice, Your Future Town Hall, Crisis on the Farm. Live from the Traverse City Opera House, here are your hosts, Mark Chalette and Maya Engel.
Well, farming is a staple here in America and a source of pride for the men and women who work our fields in order to feed America and the rest of the world. It's a profession, though, that has always had challenges, but through hard work, often our farmers have been able to overcome those challenges. But across the country and right here in northern Michigan right now, there are some challenges that no amount of tenacity or resiliency enable farmers to overcome them right now. We are seeing farms disappear and we are seeing farmers being forced out. And some people say that the industry right now is at a tipping point.
And over the next hour, we're going to be diving deeper into those issues that farmers and the entire industry are facing right now. We've assembled a panel of experts that we hope will really educate all of us on their experiences and what needs to happen in order for them to be successful in the future. So I'm going to introduce the panel. Starting here on the left, we have Brent Wagner. He is a grain farmer, and he's also the Michigan Wheat Program Vice President. Right next to him, we have his son, Paul Wagner. He is also a grain farmer, and he is the Corn Marketing Program of Michigan member. And we have Chad Reinders, a blueberry farmer here, right in the middle. And he's also the Michigan Blueberry Advisory Committee president. And Jamie Clover Adams. She is the Michigan Asparagus Advisory Board Executive Director. And last but certainly not least, we have Ben LaCrosse. He's a cherry farmer, and he's also Michigan Farm Bureau District 9 Director. So thank you all so much for being here today. It's nice to have a good variety of different perspectives in the farming industry. So thanks, everyone.
And we do have a panel of people that know an awful lot more about farming than we do. We probably also have an audience that knows an awful lot more about farming. We would love to get the audience members in. We have some prepared questions, but we'd also like anyone in our audience who has a question tonight, a comment, or a story to share with all of the viewers who are watching streaming right now. Just raise your hand. We'll come on out there and get your questions answered. It's really an opportunity for all of us to learn more about the challenges. And speaking about learning more about the challenges, we want to ask this first question to the panel, and we'd love to go right down the row. And whoever wants to start, by all means, raise that microphone and start. But let's start with a simple question. Do you think most people here in America and here in Michigan are aware of the challenges that our farmers are facing today? Ben, why don't we start with you?
Thanks for that question, and thanks for hosting this panel. I think it's an important topic, and it's one that we're interested to delve into this evening. Do our neighbors know how challenging farming is? I think people understand that farming is a very challenging profession, but I don't think they understand the scope of some of the issues that our farmers are facing right now. We're facing unprecedented era of increasing costs and decreasing returns back to the farm. And so that's kind of a recipe for disaster at the farm level. If you can't make a little bit of profits to sustain your operation from year in to year out, it makes it hard to go on. Now, I think in our area, people are becoming a little bit aware of some of the challenges that we're facing, because some of the challenges are visual. When they see a cherry orchard being ripped out right along US 31, it becomes visual that orchard is going to come out, and it probably won't ever get planted to an orchard ever again. And so that's really disheartening from a farmer's perspective when you think about that being the last crop to ever grow on that land.
I think I would say, like Ben, I think some people do understand. I think what they fail to understand is that farmers are the center of rural communities. And if you don't have healthy farmers, you don't have healthy rural communities. You don't have packing plants and processing plants and food manufacturing that employ our neighbors. And so when the farmer's gone, the infrastructure leaves as well, and there's that hole in the community.
Yeah, I think the hard part about being a farmer and trying to understand what our consumers and our neighbors are thinking of us when we're farming. A farmer has a lot of responsibility when it comes to his land and the community. And I have been growing blueberries my entire life. My family has. And like Ben said, when you rip out a field, the whole community reacts. Okay, what's going in there? Is it still going to be farming? Is it going to be housing, commercial, whatnot? And the best way we always say this is support local farmers. But the reality is you can't just support them minutely. You have to support them in a broader sense. And the topics we're going to talk about today, I think, are going to represent that because we are at a tipping point. As I sit here today as a blueberry farmer, I'm representing all the blueberry farmers in Michigan. I had farmers today texting, calling me and telling me their issues. And the problem we have is we love our community and we support our community. Farmers are into schools. They are buying from other businesses in their community. So the economical challenge, if the farmer's not there for each community, is huge.
I think a lot of the problems that we're facing in agriculture, you're seeing in other parts, even people's households, prices are going up on stuff across the board and money gets tighter and tighter, whether it's on the farm and you're trying to preserve your margin or if you're running a household. I think that's one of the biggest things that's going to be a detriment to farming is overall profitability.
I think the other thing is there's some people are finding how hard it is to do this because they're starting to raise their own animals because they want to know where the products come from. But also when we're on the road with our equipment, we can't travel only so fast. It's not designed to do speed limit. And as we farm farther and farther away, you're on the road more and more. So that causes people concerned. They take chances and passes and, they're angry you're on the road, but they also have to realize they're going to eat 2 or 3 times that day.
So it sounds like a lot of these issues some people are aware of. They can see them happening. Others, unless you're directly involved, you may not know that these are happening. Now, one issue that I know not just the farming industry has been dealing with the past few years, but really every industry is labor shortages. Is that something that you folks are dealing with and is impacting what you do? Ben, I'll start with you.
Absolutely. On a lot of our farms, labor is the number 1 or number 2 cost of production in our farming operations. And over the years, farmers have partnered with our ag workforce to help harvest our crops, to tend to our fields, to help deliver a product that people can eat on a daily basis. And we've had a lot of challenges in that. I'll probably let it go down the panel a little bit because we have some real experts here who are seeing the boots on the ground, firsthand experience of our labor issues. Jamie, you want to?
Yeah, Ben, thanks. So if you know about asparagus farming, it's hand harvested, it's hand packed, it's hand everything. And probably more than 10 years ago, our growers started seeing shortages in local labor. And so they turned to a government program that allows us to bring in seasonal, legal, non-immigrant labor. So most of them come from Mexico. They come to our farms and harvest our asparagus, our squash, our zucchini, our apples, our cherries, etc. When it started out, growers had to do it. They didn't have a choice. If the workers didn't show up at your farm to pick asparagus, you lost your crop. And so they turned to the H-2A program, not because they wanted to, because they have to. So in asparagus and other hand harvested vegetables, it is not the accessibility of labor, but the cost. And it has increased 60% over the last decade. It has accelerated since about 2017. We are now paying $18.50 an hour, plus we pay for housing, plus we pay for transportation, plus we pay farm labor contractors margins. So our growers are spending somewhere north of $30 an hour to get asparagus out of the field. It's almost 70% of our growers' costs. So getting control of that cost. So it's not the availability. There are a lot of hardworking folks who want to come to our country, earn a living, and go home. They do that. They do a great job, but we just cannot continue down the path we're going down. We're uncompetitive. Mexico pays about $1.50 an hour. Canada pays around $12 an hour. We are just not competitive. And my guys won't be here in another 2 or 3 years if we can't solve this problem.
Yeah, I mean, what Jamie said is kind of how it relates to blueberries. Blueberries can either be harvested by hand or they can be harvested with a machine. The quality is different. When you harvest by hand, it's obviously a better quality fruit. It's not bruised or soft. But when you pick with a harvester, mechanical harvester, your cost is significantly less. We saw this issue probably 5 or 6 years ago when wages started to go up with the H2A program. To hand pick blueberries, just to give you guys an example, is 90 cents to $1 per pound for a person to go pick a pound of blueberries for work. To run a mechanical harvester, it's about 15 to 25 cents per pound. So yeah, as you can see right there, the margin of difference is quite a lot when you're talking about a market that's only at $2 a pound. At 90 cents a pound to handpick, you've already wasted half of your expense just to harvest the fruit. And H2A is a great program, but it's getting way too expensive too fast. And a lot of these members up here, we've been working to try to slow it down and work with Congress to understand why we have to pay so much for our labor in the fields.
Our situation's a little different. Most of our stuff is mechanical harvested. We do some square bale hay, which is a hand labor. But the one spot that we've seen some labor issues is getting our beef processed, where some of the processing plants are having trouble getting people into work to cut the meat, and it's causing a backlog and making things slower to get that type of stuff done.
Like Paul said, it doesn't affect us as much as it does the crops to the left of me here, but also on the crop side of it, instead of hiring more labor, we've gone to bigger and bigger and bigger equipment to get over the ground faster. And now we're going back. Now a lot of it's going to no-till, so you don't spend as much time in the field, so you don't need that labor pool.
Mm-hmm. And Maya, I would add too, I presume listening are other small business owners.
Sure.
And probably they're struggling too to find people to work in their stores or in their businesses. I think the difference here is we're talking about food. We're talking about our food security for our country. And do we really want to be reliant upon other countries for the most nutritious things that we should have as Americans? All you have to do is look back in history and to see what happens when a country cannot feed itself.
One thing I think I'd like to make kind of clear is that the issues that agriculture has with our workforce and our need for an adequate workforce is a workforce issue. It's not an immigration issue, right? These workers that come in and work on our farms through the government's H2A program are here on a contract visa basis. So they will always go back to the country that they come from. They like coming here because it's such a good job. They are treated very well on our farms throughout Michigan. And it helps them return money back to their country. So they return year over year, but it's not an immigration issue. And I think Jamie's point is an important one. There's a saying that we use in agriculture: you either import your labor or you import your food. And I think that's an important question that we as a nation have to discuss, is that do we value growing our own food here? Food production for a country is a national security issue. A country that can feed itself is a safe country. And so we have to ask ourselves, do we as a country want to support the things that farmers need to help provide a safe, affordable, and abundant supply of food? Or do we want to go down a different path? I'd like to bet on the American farmer.
And I would say too, to Brent's point about equipment and larger equipment, you might say, well, like Chad, they use mechanical harvesting in blueberries. They can. In asparagus, we can't. But I think that in Michigan and probably most places east of the Mississippi, we are not a market where venture capital is going to put money into developing robotic harvesting or laser weeders or all kinds of things that can reduce the amount of labor that we need and allow those people that do work on the farm to take on higher level roles. So I think here in this state, we need to decide, do we want Michigan to be the diverse agriculture it has always been? Or do we want to look like Indiana, Illinois, and Iowa?
Because by doing that, you can lower your labor costs, essentially, correct?
Yeah, kind of like what Brent and Paul have talked about.
It's just not as dependent on that. So with the H-2A program, that probably sets a limitation on what how much you can trim your labor costs, correct? I mean, it's kind of dialed in.
So the H-2A is kind of like a minimum wage. So you have domestic workers, like
Okay.
all of us. Then the H-2A program is set with a minimum wage.
Okay.
Right now it's $18.50 for 2024. That is the minimum we can pay our baseline workers to harvest our crops. But that also includes free rent and free transportation. So if you think about what you pay at home, say you have $1,000 mortgage for your household. Well, imagine you were working wherever you're working and they pay that every month. And then they put gas in your car every month. It accumulates so quickly. Our packing shed down in the Holland area, we hire around 15 guys, and we go through a contractor. And right now, it's looking for 2024, we're gonna pay about $29 an hour for each individual worker. And these are guys just dumping containers, stacking containers. We pretty much have all our sorters are electronic, so the fruit's not even touched by a hand. But we have cardboard to take out, we have fruit to bring in. And that just has to be done. But at almost $30 an hour just for baseline work, our profit margin is very thin. And with a market that goes up and down every single hour, it's volatile.
And I would say in the vegetable industry, what my guys are looking at is probably the mix of crops will change. So when they stop growing asparagus, next on the list will be zucchini and then probably squash. So you're going to move to a different crop mix that uses equipment like Paul and Brent do. That's the way. Otherwise, you really can't trim your cost. And the other thing, the government just put in a new minimum wage for truck drivers and equipment operators that's probably $26, $27, $28 an hour. Somehow they think that the guys that come from Mexico are going to take jobs away from FedEx workers. FedEx drivers are not going to come to the farm to drive a truck, but we have to pay those wages. And so that you change your crop mix. Over on the west side of the state where most of the asparagus is grown, I've got guys that farm probably 3 miles from Lake Michigan. Guarantee that some of that land will go to houses.
Right.
Kind of like up here. I mean, yeah. It's just.
So one of the possible outcomes is we're going to see a lack of diversity in the crops being offered as farmers start to go to less labor intensive crops, right? That's one possible outcome. Another possible outcome could be a solution from Washington. This is a question. So what would you ask for from Congress to address this issue? You said, look at that enthusiasm to answer the question.
Okay, because I think Chad might be able to answer that question, but I think we should back up
Great.
and talk about how we got to this point.
Perfect.
Right? Because the H-2A program was something that wasn't widely used about a decade ago.
Okay.
And farmers really struggled to get, just domestic workers, people from the United States who traveled from crop to come up and pick their crops. So there was always this program that the United States government had called the H-2A program that farmers could opt into to contract with labor from another country, right? So they contract with this labor. It's a set price. They have a wage that's determined by a United States Department of Agriculture survey called the AWAR survey. Okay, so that determined what the minimum wage was that farmers had to pay their workforce. So when farmers opted into that program, it was like, okay, this is expensive, but it's the only game in town. It's the only chance that we have to get people to come and harvest our crops. So they opted into that program, completely retooled their whole farms to fit that program. And as the years went on, that adverse effect wage rate, the Department of Agriculture wage rate, kept creeping up on our farmers and up and up. 2 years ago, we saw a 13% increase in that wage rate. Last year, we saw a 6% wage rate. So that I kind of liken it to boiling a frog, right? The frog's not boiling when the water is in the pot and it's cool, but when you turn it up, now we have a problem. And I think that's, the theme of this evening's discussion is crisis on the farm. That's what a lot of our farms are facing, is this crisis of an ever rising labor cost, but not getting that return back, an increase on their profitability. So back to your question, Mark. Chad, what are some of the solutions that we'd like to see Congress enact on this?
Yeah, so thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. So our committee and other fruit and vegetable commodities have been working with Congress. I recently was in DC with the blueberry group. I know Michigan Farm Bureau had a group going out there, a bunch of other groups. So what we're trying to do, and Congressman John Molinar has a bill out right now that we're trying to stop the increase for the H-2A program just for a second. Okay. We just want to stop it. Like, it's a rolling down the hill as fast as we can. We're like, whoa, you got to stop this for a second, and we have to recalibrate this program. And I can get way in depth into this, or I don't have to. But the beginning question that you asked was, like, how are our workers? How do we relate what's going on at the farm to the people out in the community?
Yeah.
And then Jamie talked about small business owners. Anybody out there with a small business or runs a business knows how hard it is to get workers. And that's an everyday job, right? That's a Monday through Saturday job. In agriculture, our window is this big. For most of the commodities up here, it's a 2-month to 3-month window. We have 2 or 3 months to get our entire product out of the field, cleaned, packed, and shipped out. It is not a 9-to-5 job. It is sun up to sundown or till the job's done for that day. As a blueberry farmer, I used to I ran 5 mechanical harvester crews, and I'd have to go out there and figure out which crops were ready to pick for that day. And when a farm is ready, it's ready. You don't get to play on Facebook. You don't get to take a lunch. Hold on. You do get to take a lunch, but it's go time. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
It's go time.
Right.
And we'd load up the harvesters and we go out and pick that block. And for us as a farmer, you spend 12 months of the year trying to get your crop ready. And when it's time to harvest, you want to make sure you have somebody there to help you. You need workers. Whether it's 15 guys or 300 guys, you need those workers for that 2-month window. And this H-2A program that came out years ago was perfect. The small farmer, the guy that has 40 acres of blueberries that needs 5 guys for the summer, he could put in his paperwork and pay his money, and the guys would come. Perfect. It's not a small business where we have 12 months a year to work. So this program came out. It was great. But as the increases went up because of the AWR survey, just to give you an example, minimum wage in Michigan is $10.30 an hour. Last year was $10.10. It only went up 20 cents at 2% increase. Last year, it went up 12.5% for us and 6% for us for H-2A. We just can't win that battle. So we're asking Congress to freeze the increase for the year, reevaluate the program, and come up with a better solution. Because we want to keep the program. We just want to make sure that it fits our needs.
And I think it's kind of a short run, medium run, long run. So in the short run, like Chad said, pause. Medium run, rework the H-2A program and have time to bring people to the table and find a way that we can, because farmer worker advocates have what they want too. Everybody has kind of things they want. That gives us time to come to the table, find a way to make this a workable program. Could we give farmers credits for what they pay for their housing? Could we find ways to pay for the transportation? So we're not cutting worker wages, but we're helping the farmer defray their costs. And then in the long run, I really do believe that it's going to have to be some kind of mechanization. And we need, I don't know that we want to call it a market failure, but there is not an incentive in the market to develop robotic harvesting, weeding, etc., for the kinds of acreages we have here in Michigan. So is there a role for the government in the long haul to help us develop those labor-saving devices that help our growers continue?
And make no mistake about it, farmers want to pay their workforce an honest wage, right? But what we're asking for is a freeze, because the returns that we've gotten for our commodities, like blueberries, asparagus, cherries, haven't kept up with pace with the increasing cost of labor. And so that's what we're asking for.
Brent, Paul, got a question for you guys. You're not as labor intensive, or perhaps different types of labor that you're dealing with, but it sounds like a similar issue, and it's probably a similar issue that farmers everywhere are dealing with in terms of the cost of doing business is going up. You shared an interesting anecdote about what a bag of seed cost when you got into it, and now what it costs a few years later. Everything costs more. We, even people that don't farm, are aware of that when we go to the grocery store or do anything. Everything costs more. You're doing it on such a scale and with a small margin of profit that every time those prices go up, that probably cuts into that profit a little bit. Is that accurate? Tell us a little bit about the rising cost outside of labor of doing what you do.
Okay. First, I'd like to touch back what Ben was talking about, national security. They can grow crops in other countries cheaper than we can, but they can also use a lot of chemicals and fertilizers and stuff that we are prohibitive. So are you really getting the food as safe as you think you are from these other countries?
That's a good question.
Now you talk about increase. I started farming in 1972 full time. And the first year I bought a bag of seed corn. It does about 3 to 3.5 acres. It cost me $28 to $30 to buy the best seed corn out there. This year, the same bag of corn plants the same acres. You're talking anywhere from $280 to $340 a bag. And the price of crops back then was maybe $1.65 to $1.70, and now you're talking. Right now, maybe you get $4.65 picked up here in Traverse City, but you're going to pay 50 cents a bushel to get it transported to our local elevator, which is Newaygo is our closest elevator to sell grain to commercially.
Equipment, gas, everything costs more, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like everywhere in the economy, you know, a barrel of oil for changing tractor engine oils costs almost double what it was just a few years ago. Fuel for tractors is up. It just seems like on the other side of it, the price of grain has been coming back down. That's why in our operation, we've kind of switched to more of a retail type situation. So we're able to preserve a little bit of margin. But that's the problem, is the margin just is really tight, and it makes it difficult if you can't make a profit to stay in business very long.
Yeah.
So you all are dealing with different issues based on your different crops. But one thing that I'm sure you all have in common when it comes to the issues of farming is, and I could be wrong here, so correct me if I am, but the weather. You have to rely a lot on the lack of predictability when it comes to the weather. And over the past couple of years, it's been very unpredictable. How has that impacted you and your crop, Ben?
I guess one thing that I always say about the weather is if I got to choose what weather we got on a day-to-day basis, I'd get it wrong too. So I think we have to kind of look at weather from a real macro perspective and kind of step back. Weather is a challenge. We're dealing with weather variability, but I mean, Brent's farming history goes back a little bit longer than my farming history. But I remember when I was growing up having a snowstorm on the day that we had prom on May 17th, right? And so that was 1997. And so that was a little while ago. So we've been dealing with weather issues lately, but some of that stuff goes back several decades too. So weather is just something, a challenge that we deal with on a day-to-day basis in agriculture.
And I think this last season, for example, in asparagus, we had the driest May in Oceana County, which is the largest county for growing asparagus. It was no rain all month. We got through it, had a good crop. We're seeing some more spindly looking spears this year, intermixed with the really wonderful looking spears that are out there. But I think the difference, and I would take it back to another issue that at least we face in vegetables, is imports. And the asparagus that's grown in Peru, they turn the water on. So they farm in the desert, and when they want their crop to start, they turn the irrigation water on and away they go. And they don't have as much. They do have some variability, but they don't have the variability that we do. So they have it on us that they can grow year round. And they also have it on us that they don't have as much weather variability that we would have up here in Michigan.
Yeah, I always, when people ask me this question, I always look back at my grandfather that would tell me, why are you getting mad at the weather? You can't control it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. I can't control many things as a farmer, but definitely not the weather. But the weather does affect us, and with technology, actually, it's great with apps and weather apps. We can really predict temperatures and storms and winds. But the reality is, we are in an industry that we put our money in the ground, we put our work into the ground, and hope that we get the rain and the sunlight and everything that we need to grow these products. And I always use this example because I have a lot of friends that are in other industries, and they always ask me, how's the crop? How was the frost? How was pollination? All this stuff. And I go, okay. I go, imagine how much you make in 1 year. You know, say it's $60,000 a year. That's your annual income. So put it on the table, all of it. Put the whole 60 grand on the table and roll the dice. And I would give scenarios. I'm like, oh, you know, that's a drought. You just lost 10% of your money. You know, oh, you know, you had good sunlight. That goes up 10%. Oh, that's a frost. You just lost half your money for the year. And that was the only way I could figure out how to teach other people how farming is, because we invest every penny we have every year, hoping to get it back. I mean, we put our houses, our property on lien to pay these bills, to pay diesel fuel, to pay fertilizer bills, and pray that the rain comes and that the frost doesn't. And that's just how it goes.
Do a little bit of gambling there.
Every day.
Yep.
One thing with the weather, I mean, it is frustrating at times, but you can't live and die by it because it's nothing you can do about it. The one thing we see, I think, is as far as genetics go on a lot of new seed coming out, the genetics seem to be a lot better as far as holding up against longer term droughts. We're seeing less damage from longer dry spells and stuff from some of the new genetics that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think the hybrid I started farming in 72 compared to last year, it would not have made a crop at all. As dry as it was, we never had a rain from April to the first week August. We didn't have any measurable precipitation. And the corn still raised about a half a crop. On our hay crop, we got a third of a crop. We put the same amount of money in for the full crop. Oats, we had a bunch of oats that we didn't even combine. They weren't worth combining. They were so bad. So weather plays an important thing, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it. I mean, last year you'd watch the storms, you'd watch TV, see the weatherman, you know, it's going to rain. Well, it hit Traverse City, it went north to the UP, or hit south and went to Cadillac. There's just nothing you can do about it.
Right. Take a question from the audience.
Yeah, we do have a question from the audience. Good evening, sir.
Hello. I'd like to take this opportunity to tell our story. And I really appreciate the panel and UpNorthLive for putting this on. So I look forward to any comments on our story here. My name is Greg Cohn. I live in Kingsley with my wife, Jessica. And usually I speak at these events off the cuff, but I felt tonight I had one shot to get it right. So I wrote it down. My family farmed in southern Grand Traverse County from the 1880s until the 70s, when financial constraints forced them to discontinue. So my concerns are more local to the Traverse City area. But it was my lifelong dream to restart the farm and carry on our family legacy. My wife grew up on a dairy farm in Marion, Michigan, where her brother still milks cows on their Centennial Dairy Farm, and the love of the land is in her blood as well. Both her and I studied agriculture at Michigan State to pursue our passions in the field of growing food. In addition to our day jobs, which are agricultural related, we started Easy Win Farms in Kingsley, Michigan, fulfilling our dream of raising crops, animals, and continuing our family's heritage. We're currently farming from Buckley to east of Kingsley, spanning 20 miles, and have been able to accumulate 250 acres of farmland, most of it being rented. Unfortunately, for us to cover our overhead costs, we need about 300 acres. And as of now, there's no more land to be found. For generations, our families in the area have farmed alongside each other in harmony. Today, however, we find ourselves in that precarious position as competitors, as each year we all continue to lose land to development subdivisions. Although competition may be fierce amongst us fellow farmers as we search for farmable land to rent, it pales in comparison to the unstoppable force of sprawl. Sprawl is permanent. When I was young, I remember the white farmhouse and the cherry trees that stood where the Grand Traverse Mall is today. We replaced that beautiful piece of land with a slab of underutilized concrete and a half-empty mall that'll continue to deteriorate in land that'll never be farmed again. I recognize the crisis we find ourselves with affordable housing in our areas. Our population continues to boom, but I believe we need to be more strategic in planning. As I drive down M37, headed south when I leave town I drive past empty buildings and lots that are underutilized in southern Grand Traverse area. Yet development continues to push further and further south instead of rehabilitation of these already established infrastructures. Underdeveloped lots, vacant buildings, and open spaces are hoarded by developers and investors holding out for the big ticket win with anything near Traverse City. And they have every right to do so, but it breaks my heart to see the storage units, commercial buildings, and housing push further south, taking what little land remains in our area as these investments stay vacant. I'm not anti-progress or anti-development, but I'm for smart, well thought out planning that preserves our natural resources, open space. Once it's gone, it'll never come back and we will miss it. In addition to competition from local developers, I find myself being solicited weekly by investment companies from around the country, offering top dollar for the farmland that my wife and I do own for the purpose of subdivision and development. As a matter of fact, Southern Grand Traverse, Northern Wexford County, an investment group out of Indiana, who is associated with 2 large real estate investment and brokerage companies under the guise of a benign organization name, own 2,336 acres according to their website. Any rent revenue from their tenants is then exported out of our rural communities and the county to investors wherever they may be around the world. Any rent revenue, and then to make matters even worse, they rent the land to the highest bidder who happens to be a farmer 90 miles away, not in our local community. So those dollars are exported out of our county as well. Meanwhile, the same community of Buckley can hardly afford to staff their fire and rescue facilities. These investors have every right to do this, but this makes me sad. The decisions of how our whole southern county will look in the future is on the whim of one organization. In addition to my day job in farming, I sit on the Farmland Preservation Fund Committee for the state of Michigan that helps fund local organizations such as the Grand Traverse Land Conservancy. Please reach out to these organizations if you or anyone you know has a large tract of farmland they're wanting to sell. We have many programs available to get the seller a price comparable to development valuation, but bridge the gap for farmers to be able to economically purchase the land and keep it in production. Our farm's motto is taking pride in the crops we grow and the legacy we leave. We are committed to the community, the stewardship, and our valuable resources in the preservation of agriculture in Northern Michigan. I want to thank the panelists and UpNorthLive for putting this program together and allowing me to introduce myself and tell our story. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Story you hear often?
Yeah, first off, I want to say thank you for that story. And as a married man myself, I know how hard it is to be married to farmers. So I'm being serious. It's very difficult, and I congratulate you on that. But that's a story I hear a lot, and that's literally the passion that's behind me. What I do on this committee is free. I don't get paid. It's voluntary. And when I hear stories of farmers like that are losing their farms, right? They're being offered all this money for a subdivision or a commercial lot or a parking lot. This year in Michigan, we had, I think, over 600 acres of blueberries sold because they couldn't make a profit. That will never probably be farmland again. So I know exactly what you mean by that, and that's why I feel so strong in this situation is that money, like you said, when it leaves this county or the state, it's gone. And we have to make sure that we protect our farmers in this state, in this county, in these towns, because that money stays here. That pays for schools, that pays for small businesses, and that keeps us employed. And that's exactly why I do things like this, to make sure that people are aware of that. So thank you.
Somebody on the panel, I overheard this. So somebody can raise their hand and claim this. And maybe you all will, right? When we lose our farms, our communities lose their diversity. Sound like it? Did you? Yes. Explain that concept. It sounds like we heard a little bit of hashing out sprawl. This is more than just the one farm that sold and is now a subdivision. How do our communities lose their diversity when they disappear?
Well, it's number one, they disappear because they're not competitive. They can't make a return on their investment. And when you lose them, then the land either goes to a lower purpose. You go to instead of a higher value fruit or vegetable, then you're growing corn or soybeans. And the Fruit Ridge is what it is, and Oceana County and Southwest Michigan are what they are because that's what the land's good for. Nice asparagus doesn't like wet feet, sandy soils, perfect. Not sure what kind of corn we're going to grow on that. And I know that some of the farmers that I work for, their grandpas and great grandpas had cattle. And you look at that land and you go, yep, I can see that. I can see why they would have done that. But you lose that diversity. And so, again, what I know best, Oceana County, if we lose asparagus and then we lose zucchini or squash, there are 2 packing plants, processors, freezers, where there are probably 300 people that won't probably work as much as they have in the past. There's a school system that relies on one of those freezers, probably their largest taxpayer. Are they going to continue, they're going to ship in sweet potatoes from North Carolina to run through the plant to keep it profitable? And so as that tax base disappears, I think you see that I've lost in asparagus over about 6 years, we've lost 50 growers out of 150.
Wow.
So we've lost, and they were people in the middle. If you look at the ag census from 2022 and you look at vegetables, we lost over 12,000 acres of vegetables in Michigan. It was not potatoes. Potatoes were pretty flat. So it was all the other vegetables. And we saw growth in the number of farms. Well, it was the really small farms and the really big farms. So we are hollowing out the middle. And I think it was Chad that said, you guys are on the school board and on the local fire department and part of the other community groups that are there. And when they're gone, there aren't people that fill those in. And one thing that brought me to this job that I'm so thankful for, there are probably 35 young growers like these 2 guys in my group, young guys and gals, and their future is at risk. I got one of my young guys, he's 33, I think. He said, Jamie, I don't know why, I just don't invest my money in Morgan Stanley. I could make a heck of a lot more and I'd have fewer ulcers. And so it's just very difficult for him and his family. He's 4th generation. He's got a little boy. You have 4th, 5th generation farmers that when they go away, the communities are going to shrivel.
One of the things I think that makes Northern Michigan unique and people wanting to come here is the open space and the diversity of the crops and the open landscape. And if we're not really careful with how we go forward with this, that's going to be gone. And it's not going to be at the special place that it is now. It's going to be covered in houses on every corner, and it's going to lose what people come here for, I'm afraid.
A lot of the townships and counties set a precedent that you have to have 5 acres in a farm ground area to build a house. Well, the first thing they do is build the house right in the middle of it. So you've lost, nobody's going to farm around the house. Most of them don't have livestock to put on it. So, and then it's just people wanting to move north. I get requests in the mail, 1 or 2 a week. We see you have vacant ground, have farm ground in Grand Traverse County. We're willing to buy it from you. So but like everybody else has said, when that gets a house on it or a subdivision or a mall, that's never coming back.
So all these issues are not just impacting you as farmers, they're impacting the entire community and potentially changing the culture of Northern Michigan.
There's a reason why when people fly into the Traverse City area, they fly into the Cherry Capital Airport. There's a reason why this is why we host the National Cherry Festival right here in Traverse City, right? Because we are the world's greatest place to grow cherries, right? And so I think it gets back to the question of where do we want our food to come from? The cherry industry has really faced severe pressure from imports over the last decade. They've been challenging for us in the marketplace because they come in and they undercut our price. We have challenged the legality of a lot of those imports in the International Trade Commission. Our growers funded a trade case just like the blueberry growers did a couple of years ago. And unfortunately, we lost that trade case because we didn't have sufficient data to prove our case. But the question still remains, where do we want our food to come from? 30 years ago, 14% of all fruits consumed in the United States were imported fruits. Today, that number is 30%, and in 2040, that number will be 70%. Of all fruits consumed in the United States will be imported fruits. Chad showed the picture, talked about the picture of the 99-cent blueberries for sale in Michigan. That is well below the cost of production for a blueberry farmer to produce a pint of blueberries in the state of Michigan.
I can't even grow it and pick it for that price.
You can't, right? And so we all enjoy going to the grocery store just like every consumer does, and being able to afford our food, right? Afford a stable food source and an abundant food source. But boy, we have a value that agriculture provides a value to our communities and to our country that we need to be really reflective of and be very intentional when we think about planning and developing. I think the gentleman talked about it really eloquently down here, because when we make decisions long term, they're going to affect the fabric of our communities.
So, Jamie, I got to ask you, because this is something we talked about earlier. All right, so those of us that aren't farmers are hearing this, and we think we're going to shop local. We're going to support our local growers. We can't always go to the grocery store and get local. Jamie, tell us how hard it is to get local products that we know where they were grown, we know how they were grown, that they were grown safely, and they support our local growers. And we go to X grocery store and we can't find them there. Why not?
Well, I experienced something last year. I'm old enough. I never had a hard time giving away money, but we did.
It happened.
So my board dedicated a significant amount of money to promote asparagus, because asparagus is an impulse purchase. Not a lot of people have it on their shopping list. We work hard to get it on their shopping list. So we need them to see a beautiful product and promotional materials when they go to the grocery store. So they go, oh yeah, I'm going to get some of that. And I've got friends coming over or whatever. We had several grocery chains in the United States, not here in Michigan. I will preface it by not here in Michigan, but in the United States, who weren't interested in working with us. And the reason is they wanted to be open to being able to buy product that would be cheaper from Mexico or Peru. So they kept their options open, and you can't blame them. I mean, they're a business. They've got shareholders they've got to take care of. But if you get closer to the southern border in our country or down in the southeast, you will see more of the imported asparagus. And as Chad said, the 99-cent blueberries, it'd be one thing if they were 99 cents in, I don't know, December. but right now, Georgia and Florida, they're in production. Our colleague farmers in Washington State started producing asparagus 3 weeks ago, and we're still seeing Mexican asparagus in the grocery store. And that's where it hurts.
Yeah.
It's not, and I would add to Ben's point about the rising fruit, imported fruits. Don't let anybody tell you it's bananas and mangoes and dragon fruit, because it ain't. It is, some of it is, it's everything, but the bulk of it, they're coming in on top of our season. They grow year round. They can afford to lose money during our short window because they can make it up on the back end. And if you look at asparagus, the price during our season, FOB wholesale, probably an 11-pound box, I think probably goes for $8 to $10. Once our season is over, that doubles. So they're making their money when we're not in the market.
You talked about the local processors, but the cherry industry is an example. There's no local cherry processors left in northern Michigan. They have to be transported down to southern Michigan, in central Michigan, to have it processed. So then they got to come back. Same as your livestock. There's no big processors anymore. There's 5 or 6 nationwide, and they're all controlled by big conglomerates. So that is part of the problem to buy local, is you can't get it processed local and keep it local. It's going to move in. I've seen articles they were saying where, some products are handled by 39 people from the time I would sell it till you would buy it. 39 people have had their hands on that product to sell it. And that's where your costs come from.
Yeah, and I think part of that is people see high prices in grocery stores. I see it. Our family has changed how we shop. That's not from the farmers. That's from everybody from us to the retail store. We don't control our pricing. We get paid what we get paid. And for blueberries, we've been getting the same number of dollars per pound for the last 10 years. So we're not changing the price down the road as
So
the
holding
brokers.
the farmer accountable in that case is like holding the gas station attendant responsible for the price we're paying
Right,
at the pump, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, you were talking about food is one of the things the United States produces and exports to make a profit on. Everything else we're importing. So a few years ago, the United States was the largest soybean grower in the world. Now South America, between Argentina and Brazil, are taking that over. And that's, they're taking down rainforests down there. They're burning them down, slash them down to get ground. You couldn't do that in this country. And it's the same thing. You don't know what's sprayed with, what it's produced with. So if you want national security, you want food security, you got to keep it local and keep it from the United States, because our standards are the strictest in the world.
That's an important point. Our standards are the strictest in the world. So the thing that everybody can know is that food products that are grown in the United States are of the highest quality, bar none, out of anything that there is out there on the marketplace. We have the highest regulatory standards. We have the highest sustainability standards. We have the highest worker standards. So our workers are treated the best out of any country around the world. Any product that's imported is well below. It's a substandard product to ours. And so that's the message that I think people need to be really reflective of, is that American farm products, American agricultural products are the highest quality in the world.
Do you want to just take a moment? We have a couple more minutes left. So if someone from the audience has something they would, I got a hand right here. We're gonna go ahead and take, and you do too. All right, I'm gonna start with him. Hold on just one moment. All right, sir, thank you for joining us.
My name's Carl Rubel. I'm a planner on the Whitewater Township Planning Commission. We're updating our master plan, and we have most of our people want it to remain agricultural and low density housing. Incidentally, I in the 1950s came up from downstate and worked on the Pulsifer farm for every summer for 2 or 3 years. So it was really sad to see that all cut down. But our question is, our ordinances, agricultural ordinance doesn't agree with our master plan. We allow houses on 1 acre. Acme Township has 5 acres. But the question is, what can we do to encourage the farmers to keep on farming when they can get so much money for this land for subdivision? So is there anything we can do to improve our ordinances as we go through this new master plan to encourage our farmers to stay here?
I guess go to your local government and try to impress on them that, I know they want houses because the tax base is larger, but when you build a house on a subdivision, say you get 20 houses on that farm, each one of them, it takes infrastructure, it takes policemen, it takes firemen, it takes everything. It costs them money. They say they're getting a lot more taxes, but they're not really when you look at the big picture. You've got one farm on, say 5 farms on a mile. You got 5 houses. You got the same problem. You got fire, you got police. You put 30 houses in there, you just made 6 times as much. So that's, and I mean, you just have to get involved with your boards and try to impress on them that, when the land's gone, it's gone. It's not going to come back to be. You're not going to tear out concrete. You're not going to tear out pavement. You're not going to tear buildings down and grow anything.
All right, we have another question. We have another question out here.
Can you explain the new labeling on meat? Because there's a lot of meat imported from other countries too.
Yeah, it just was just passed by the United States government that any product, any meat product in the United States that's marked made in the United States or grown in the United States has to be grown here. It cannot be. In the past, they would be able to bring it in from Argentina and Brazil, cut it up, package it, and put it as a product in the United States. So they cannot do that anymore. So our standards are a lot higher on beef than it was a couple of weeks ago. And Michigan actually has higher standards than some of the state does. There's hot dogs hot dogs to be made to be sold in Michigan are the highest standards in the United States. We
have a few minutes left. So So I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to address, are you hopeful about the future of what you do for a living? If nothing changes, they just answered that question, I think.
That's a good question, Mark. My son and I were talking about it today, that he may be, I'm the 4th generation, he's the 5th generation on that farm. It's been there 120 plus years. It may not go on because a lot of our landlords are passing away and ground's being sold. So where does it come viable? How big an operation do you have to have? And the other thing, like we talked about, is infrastructure. If there's only 2 or 3 dealerships in the 3 counties that sell fertilizer, you don't really have a market. If they disappear, just like the cherry processors, when they move out, you've got nothing to do. So it's not that they don't want to farm. It's possibly they can't farm because they don't have the ability to sell their product or be able to raise it.
So I think one thing you're going to see is the mix of the farms change. The one good thing about growth is it brings customers. And we're here to sell something at the end of the day. So, through our meat store, we need customers, we need traffic flow. As more people move into the area, if we can get to those customers and explain that we have a better product, it's fair priced. It may change. We may not be growing corn on a large scale possibly, but we still may have the cattle. It may be on a smaller acreage. It may look different, but I think at the end of the day, you're still going to have agriculture in the area. We're still going to feed people. We just need to make sure we're doing it the best that we can, and that we're looking more than 5 or 10 years out, that we're taking a long look at this so that when rules and ordinances go into effect, they don't adversely affect us.
We have about a minute left. So
Speed round.
change needs to take place.
Change needs to take place, and everyone that's out there needs to express their voice to their Congress and senators and state reps, because that's who listens, and that's who can help us change all these things.
Yeah, I'm optimistic about the future of agriculture in the state of Michigan, because when our farmers in Michigan are allowed to compete on a fair playing field, we can always prosper because we have the greatest resources, natural fresh water, and good people here in the state of Michigan.
It's back to that hard work and tenacity that farmers have always been known. It's going to take a little bit of that, and probably it sounds like some changes elsewhere and changes in the system to make it work. We would like to thank our panelists for being here. I know Maya and I learned an awful lot tonight. Hopefully the viewers at home did as well. We'd also like to thank our audience for being here and sharing this with us. It's about a conversation.
Absolutely.
It's about getting that conversation going, educating, so that we can all make good, wise choices and be supportive of those people that help feed us and create that diversity in our community and play such an important foundation and role and have for so long in what makes our towns and our communities what they are.
Well said. I can't really top that.
Right.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your experiences with us. And like Mark said, thank you all so much for joining us here and for watching on our stream. This was, of course, Your Voice, Your Future Town Hall Crisis on the Classroom. Have a great night, everyone.